Oh, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Health and Happiness podcast. No BS here, and I'm so excited to introduce you to a beautiful new friend of mine. I met the beautiful Tara Swann a couple of weeks ago at an amazing event in which she spoke at. And Tara Swann is so inspiring with her story, and today we want to talk about not only her journey to being this fantastic, inspiring coach and author sharing her story, but also her experience of really letting go of this title and this label of anxiety. I have anxiety. So to kick us off, thank you so much, Tara, for being here. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what the catalyst was for bringing you to this point in your life now where you are an emotional empowerment coach and a published author. Tell us a little bit more about what brought you here.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. You're such an amazing person. I felt that when I met you, so honored to be here and excited to be here. Wow, where do I start? So I had anxiety for 17 plus years of my life. And I was diagnosed with chronic anxiety and depression. And honestly, when I was diagnosed, I thought it was something I just had to live with for the rest of my life. And so I just went about life, I would have these episodes where I would not want to leave my house. I'd be too fearful. I'd be too fearful to go to events. I had to have alcohol or another substance to go to any sort of event. I just had anxiety, and I put it down to having anxiety and thought, okay, well, that's just my life now. And it wasn't until I sort of started my personal development journey. I said yes to a business opportunity in network marketing originally. And I didn't realize by stepping into that how much of a personal development journey that would be. So when I said yes to that opportunity, I had just become a mum of two, so that I just had my second baby. He was 7 weeks old, and I remember using him as an excuse not to leave my house. And when it was presented to me, my mind was screaming, no, like, you can't do this. You can't do anything outside of what, like, your comfort zone, which was so uncomfortable. I don't know why they call it a comfort zone. But I knew that if I didn't say yes, that my boys would have to grow up, living in the same four walls that I had subjected myself to. Yeah. So I said yes. And by saying yes, it prompted the biggest personal development journey of my life. So to even, evolve in business or go anywhere in business, I had to start looking within and start doing some work on myself to actually show up, because I was so fucking afraid to be seen. So how can you run a business when you don't actually want yourself to be seen?
Yeah.
So when I first started, I was so anxious. It took me 6 months to send a voice message to a friend. It took me a year, I think it was close to a year, to put up a video of myself. It was a really slow start because I was so anxious all the time. And I realized, like, slowly my confidence started to grow as I did these small things outside of my comfort zone. But I was still fearful. I was still really insecure. I was still not wanting to show up in the ways that I needed to have the success that I craved. So what became the catalyst for the shift in my confidence, the shift in my life ultimately, was when I announced I was going to hold a free online live training. I was working with a coach and she encouraged me to do it, and I thought, okay, that sounds like a good idea. When I announced I was going to do it, I had this wave of panic come over me. I was pacing my house thinking, what the F did you just do? You can't speak to people. Like, how are you going to show up and speak to people live like this? I can't do it. And thankfully I could reach out to her, my coach, and I just said, look, I'm having an anxiety attack right now. I can't do this. And she said these words to me. She said, your thoughts are attached to feelings. when you release the feeling, the thoughts will disappear as a byproduct.
Mm.
And those words have stuck with me because what happened then was the catalyst for everything. I went and sat with what I was experiencing. Instead of being in my head, I dropped into my body, and I could literally feel where that emotional energy was being stored in my body.
Mm.
And as I sat with it, I just breathed into it and I allowed it to come up. And what followed was tears. And then what followed that was clarity on where my fear around speaking and being seen had stemmed from in the first place, which was an experience from my childhood, which was just my sister being a sibling, really, but my sister challenging me and teasing me growing up. It felt like she challenged everything I would say.
Yeah.
But being a sensitive little Pisces, I sort of formed beliefs. I held on to the emotions with that. Like I just suppressed those emotions of shame and like not being good enough and feeling like an idiot. And I also made it believe something about myself. I made it believe that it wasn't actually safe to use my voice. It wasn't safe to speak. And that also manifested as experiences through school where I was kind of teased or challenged if I ever spoke in class or whatever it would be.
Yeah.
Which just reinforced that belief that it wasn't safe to use my voice. So I had this massive fear around speaking, had this anxiety around speaking, and had this anxiety around being seen. But after that experience, after releasing that emotion and realizing where it had stemmed from, the root cause, I was able to then show up to that live training with absolute confidence, certainty, clarity. And I realized from then that my anxiety, I didn't have anxiety. I actually should never have been diagnosed with anxiety. I should have been diagnosed with unhealed emotional trauma.
Oh my God. I just got goosebumps because, yes, I feel so passionate about this, which is why I was so excited to talk to you, because what a realization, you know? Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a huge realization. And from that point, I was like, okay, well, what else are we not taught? I mean, I knew to question things when I healed my physical body from all of these health issues with whole food nutrition back when I was 23 years old. So I started questioning this as well. I was like, well, why? I'm just using this label as anxiety to like basically dictate my life, but I can be free of this. And that was my realization. So from then, I just continuously went into my body, continuously kept releasing emotion. And I just basically skyrocketed from there to the point where I wrote 2 books in 1 year and was able to show up in my business in the way that I wanted to. I stopped being fearful of being seen. I stopped being fearful of being judged and ridiculed or whatever it may be. And I could just be me, which is ultimately how you find your happiness, and where your confidence lies is when you can truly align with just who you are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, amazing. That is such a powerful story and such a powerful message as well, because so many of us do rely on these diagnoses, you know, these diagnoses that kind of make us feel like, oh, understood. And so there's a sense of belonging. There's a sense of like, oh, okay, now someone gets me. Now I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like I'm understood now. This is what I have. I have this thing. And I feel like, you know, obviously how the human race and how the medical system and, you know, we won't go into all that, but, you know, it does allow us to kind of make sense of what we're experiencing, but it's to make sense of what we're experiencing in the 3D. It's the symptomology of what has been, right? It's the symptomology of what we have cultivated in our unconscious mind about who we are as a person. And like you said before, you know, and I found that really powerful, is that, you know, you've literally touched on my next question, which was, when did it start for you? And when you had that realization, like, oh my gosh, this fear, I've carried this from childhood. I've always felt this way. And so when you connect to that very first time, or that time in which something flipped and something changed in the way that you were showing up, and you decide those belief structures started to be imprinted upon that event, it's like, well, when you connect to those roots, you're like, oh, wow, actually, these nervous system responses that I'm having are actually just a representation of that belief structure, because what I'm experiencing is trying to keep me safe. Like our body is so primitive in that way, right? It's just like always keeping us safe.
Yeah. It's literally what our brain does, right? It's its job is to keep us safe. And so when exactly that, when we have these responses, it is literally, it has positive intent. Like all of what we're experiencing, our negative thoughts, everything that we experience has positive intent in some way. And when we can dig deeper on that, we can actually send it love and learn to understand ourselves a bit better.
Yeah.
I want to touch on what you said before as like, when we're told that we have these things, it does give us a sense of like being understood. It's like all of these labels, they do make us feel a little bit better in that. Like I remember when I was experiencing anxiety before I was diagnosed, I just thought I was crazy. I didn't know that anyone else was experiencing this. Like it wasn't really spoken about when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I honestly just thought I was crazy. I was like, what is wrong with me? And that obviously made me feel much worse. I just thought I was crazy. When I was diagnosed, I was like, oh, okay, there's a label for this. And then I took that on as my identity. It became an identity for me. And I actually got a chapter in You Don't Have Anxiety, my book, which is titled Choose Your Identity, because anxiety and depression was my identity. But we don't have to live that way. And as soon as you realize that and realize you can actually be whoever the fuck you want to be, you can choose your identity, you can choose how you want to show up in the world, you can then start living in accordance with that. You may have to do some healing to get there, sure, but you don't have to live with these labels that are placed upon you. Yes, they can make you feel better temporarily because they make you feel like you're less crazy, but it doesn't have to be your life.
No. And I fully resonate with that, when you were just mentioning that it became your identity. I work with so many women that have been given these diagnoses, and it's really easy to kind of allow that to now dictate or validate the way that you're showing up in your life, right? Because our unconscious mind, the belief systems that you have about yourself, your identity that you've formed from such a young age, it only wants to be proven true, right? It only wants to be proven and be validated. And so if you have had this belief or created this belief, it's not safe to speak, then you're going to hold on to whatever is going to validate that truth for you until you start to go, hold on, this is not working. This is not actually not serving me, right? It's like, at what point did you realize, and I know that you said that it was that pivotal point for you where you were like, okay, I'm going to do this training. I'm going to, speak and run this masterclass or whatever it was. And that was a turning point for you. But up and before that point, was there something in your mind, something in your body that was saying, I'm not going to put up with this. Like something has to change. This is not serving me. Because so many people don't really get to that point of like, I'm sick of this. I no longer want to subscribe. They stay stuck in that identity, right? So what was that process like? What were the little things that came up for you that were like, hold on, I'm not going to continue on this path?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have to get to rock bottom before they have that pivotal moment, right? This is why we need to embrace all of life's ups and downs, because they're all serving a purpose. But yes and no. So I was so disconnected from my body before that point. I was so disconnected. So I had no idea what was happening in my body. All I knew was what was happening in my mind, which was just thought after thought after thought. It was taking over. It was a spiral. But there was definitely like I said, when I had my second baby and I was using him as an excuse not to leave my house, when I was afraid to actually take them out to do things with my boys without someone else being there, like my partner, I knew that something had to change. I couldn't keep living the way I was living. And I did it for them, really. Prior to that, no. Like prior to that, I think I needed almost that them in my life as a prompt to be like, you can't do this to them as well. Which is really sad, because now I'm like, far out, I wish I did my healing and did this work before I had them, because I've changed so much as a parent, as a mother, since doing this work, because when you reconnect to yourself, you can obviously see differently in other people as well, including your children. So yeah, it's tricky. So yeah, I had those inklings. But yeah, that really was the pivotal moment for me, was when I decided, that I wanted to actually show up in my business in a different way, because I wanted different results, that I had to do that work.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that, for all of us, it is this kind of, staying in this comfort, because our sense of self, that is our comfort, right? Whether it's helpful or not, it's what we know to be true. And so anything outside of that, like for you, it's like stepping up and speaking up and, speaking in front of people. It's like, well, that wasn't a part of your sense of self back then. And so, that's going to feel discomfort. That's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel scary. And so it's easy to want to stay in what we know to be true and what we know is safe for us. And so I love the fact that, although, we're always going to look back on our journey and go, oh, I wish that I had done this sooner, or I wish that this had happened instead. But ultimately, everything's divine timing, right? And I like to say to my clients, and I've experienced this myself, especially with parenting and motherhood, I've got 2 little girls myself, and that's such a massive pivotal change in our sense of identity as well, who we thought we were and who we are now becoming. And it's almost like we need to have this breakdown before we have this breakthrough. And we're always going to be unconsciously motivated to change. And there has to be this one pivotal thing that's in alignment with our values, and for you, it was like, well, I want to be there for my boys. I want to get out there and experience things. I'm going to assume that was kind of your motivation, was like, I don't want them to feel like this is normal. And it's almost like that connection to what's important to us is going to be the thing that kicks us in the ass and goes, okay, it's time to shake this out of yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was just the norm for me just to be in that state. And I guess a part of me, because I didn't have much awareness before having my boys, before having my second boy especially. But yeah, it was just a part of me trying to keep me safe by keeping myself indoors, by not speaking to people, by not going to events. Like, I was just simply trying to keep myself safe. But in that, I was causing more harm than good without knowing it. And it is about, stepping out of that, realizing, or first of all, cultivating the awareness to know that you don't have to be that way. Yeah, definitely.
For those that are listening, and I know that so many people experience these symptoms of anxiety, panic, overwhelm, this compounding effect of stress on our body and our nervous system, and also with our mind. Now that you've kind of come through the other end and you're now speaking in front of people at events and you're writing books and, you're spreading this message, what is your advice, to those that are listening that feel like there is no way outside of this anxiety bubble? There's no way, they can't see that there's another way to be. What's your advice to them?
Well, first of all, that was me for so many years of my life, thinking that there was no way out, that it was just how I had to be, that I had to live that way. My advice would be, you don't have to do the scary thing to be more confident. So this was something that when I was really anxious and I first started my business, and I had mentors telling me, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to go and do the scary thing to feel more confident. The problem was for me, when I was in that state and they were telling me to do these things, I would do it. It would take me 20 takes to record a video. I'd put it up and I'd run back into my comfort zone, into my little hidey hole, with thoughts of like, you look like a fucking idiot. Like, why did you do that? People probably think you're stupid. People are judging you. And then it would take me even longer to try and do it again. Like, it would have me running further back into my comfort zone. So that advice was not helpful for me when I was in that anxious state.
Yeah.
What I realized when I started releasing emotions was that you don't have to go and do the scary thing to feel more confident. You can actually release the emotion or neutralize the fear before doing the scary thing. By neutralizing the fear, by neutralizing the emotion, it's not scary anymore, and you can go and do it with confidence. So just like I explained with that free masterclass, and I've had many examples of this, and I call it neutralizing emotions, and it's in both of my books actually. By releasing that emotion first, you can go and show up and do that thing. So let's say, for an example, you've got a job interview tomorrow and you're really scared about it, you're really nervous. If you were to sit there today and go into what it is you're actually so scared of, have a think about it. Like, say you're scared of not saying the right thing in the interview or whatever it is. Play that out in your mind now. Feel into your body and where you're holding that fear and that emotion now. Feel it out now. So however that wants to be expressed, by feeling that out now, it's no longer present in your body, and you can actually go and show up to that interview with confidence. It's just like I did with my free masterclass. Like, I felt out the fear and I was able to show up with confidence. It was no longer scary to me. So you don't actually have to go and do the scary thing full of fear with all of those nasty thoughts. Thoughts are attached to feelings. If you can feel out that emotion, you can just show up without all of that mess.
Yes. I love that. Oh my gosh. Because, being also, understanding how trauma resides in our body as well. It's kind of like emotions that haven't been processed, an unfinished trauma loop. It's like this emotional trauma loop that, with our emotions, it's like they're supposed to go through, emotions are energy emotion, right? And so they're supposed to go through their full cycle. You're supposed to feel it. You're supposed to let it flow through your body, your nervous system, and then it's supposed to come back to a place of like equilibrium, like homeostasis, like a place where you're like, okay, I'm safe. It's okay. You felt the emotion, and then it's come back around to kind of complete the cycle. And in this modern day and age, and there's so much conditioning around, it's not okay to feel certain emotions. It's not okay. Like, it's not okay to feel sad or express sadness or, stop crying. And so we've been conditioned unconsciously to not regulate our emotions and fully complete the cycle. And so what you've just described is so important, because it's really the foundation of emotional intelligence, right? Like, being safe to feel whatever emotions are coming up for us, but be able to complete the loop so that we can come back and be like, you know what? Yeah, now I can see. What if I say the wrong thing? What's going to happen if I say the wrong thing? What's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, cool. I've reframed that. Now I know. Now I don't have that fear because I know exactly how that's going to play out, right?
Yeah.
And so I love what you've just described, and it's such a powerful tool, because so many of us are afraid to actually express that emotion, feel it fully, and then go and do the task. We've been conditioned to swallow it. I'm fearful. Oh, feel the fear and do it anyway. But it's kind of like, well, yeah, fear the fear, regulate the fear, tell yourself what you need to know, find out all the lessons, and then go and do the thing, right? There's missing some steps there.
Yeah, I always thought that, because I've seen that pop up so many times, feel the fear and go and do it anyway. But it's like, it's not about, okay, I'm fearful, I'm just going to go and do the thing. No, like, be with that fear, be with that part of you that's fearful, because that part needs love. And it is about reparenting yourself. Like, because exactly, growing up, we were taught to stop crying. Big girls and boys don't cry. Oh, men especially, go and have another beer, like grow some balls.
Yeah. Or go to your room, go to your room. Get away from me. Yeah.
Yeah, stop crying. It's not okay to feel that way. So we take that, like, especially when we learn that at a really early age as children, or if we're punished for experiencing some sort of emotion, we don't feel safe to experience that. So it is about reparenting yourself to going into that part and being like, it's actually safe. Like, you are safe to fully experience this, and allow that to come through in whatever way it desires, really, because I have expressed emotions in so many different ways. I've had tantrums before as an adult because it was how my inner child needed me to express whatever it was that I was experiencing. I must have looked crazy and I laughed at myself afterwards, but it was exactly what I needed to do. Yeah. And so it is about helping yourself feel safe to feel whatever it is that's arising for you. And there are so many ways you can do that. Like, you can hold yourself, hold your heart, breathe through it, but ultimately just allowing that emotion to, like you said, complete its cycle. And the freedom that follows that is so unbelievably powerful. Like, it's a power and beauty beyond anything I've experienced before, every single time as well. Like, even yesterday, I had a massive purge. I've got a chapter in my second book, Becoming Her, which is titled Purge and Surge.
Love that.
Basically, when you have these huge releases and when you allow yourself to go there, you can observe what's happening in your body without being fully in it. Like, it's all happening to you. It's like, no, I'm just going to allow this emotional energy, because it is just energy, to flow through me. And once it has, you create this space. And then what follows that is the surge. It's like, whether you jump up and feel like you've had 5 shots of coffee and you're bouncing off the walls, that's happened to me. Or maybe it's a day or two later where you're just like, oh, I've just got this beautiful, calm contentment now. Like, I feel so grounded. I'm so in the moment. Oh, seeing all of this, magic that's surrounding me now. Like, that's surge as well. It's just, what follows is love, freedom, joy, unlike anything you've experienced before. But you have to go through that to experience the contrast of it.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And having the courage to really allow yourself to go there, obviously baby steps, if you're having this emotion, I think that's why it's so important. And I know you've spoken about having a coach. It's like, we all need that person to be our supporter, and that person that's going to help guide and help us to integrate and learn these tools and strategies to know that it's okay to actually regulate ourselves, to actually learn that all emotions are absolutely necessary. They're all there to guide us through life. And the more we suppress and repress them, the more we're going to bump up against these walls and barriers and challenges, right? Because ultimately, if we don't let them move through us, they're going to end up moving us, right? It's like those emotions now, we're going to be reacting to life and our environment and people, stuff and things, rather than letting that emotion go full cycle. And for us to actually be in control and make those decisions and take those big leaps. And, I think that that's such a powerful lesson. And I hope that whoever's listening is writing that down and using that as a strategy and a technique or a tool that you can sort of teach yourself to, at times when you're feeling this particular emotion or you have this particular thought moving through your mind and it's really getting in the way of you taking action. Just remove yourself, right? Like, take some space, take 5, like Mel Robbins would say, take 5 seconds, take 5 minutes and remove yourself so that you can just be with yourself, because we're so busy feeling like we have to go and do, like, got to take action, got to move on, got to, get over it. And it's like, well, you can't get over it unless you go through it, right?
The only way out is through. It's so true. Like, for so long, I was forcing action. I was making myself show up and doing things. And ultimately, it wasn't productive. What became productive was, if I'm feeling a certain way and something feels forced, is, like you said, to go and take some time, gift yourself some time to go and experience what it is you're experiencing, and then come back. And what follows is more aligned, inspired, exciting work for you. It doesn't have to be forced. It can be flow, but you have to allow yourself to release what it is that is making it feel forced to you. Because behind every fear is emotion. Behind every insecurity is emotion. If you're showing up in the world and you're reactive to things, if little things are pissing you off, if you're like, forcing things, if you just don't quite feel like you're in flow, it is like behind all of that is emotion. It dictates the way we show up in the world, and that can be in a fearful way, in a way that doesn't feel right for us, or it can be in a really inspired, excited, joyful way. But we don't realize how much power we have or how much control we have over that until we start going in and releasing the emotions that are making us show up in that fearful way in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you agree, like, yes, those thoughts are attached to emotion, and those emotions, like you mentioned before, are attached to a decision that you made, a belief. And it's like, the more we can connect to those roots, like you pulled yourself back to a moment in your childhood where you decided, hold on a second, I'm experiencing this thing with my sister and I'm deciding that it's not okay to, speak. It's like I get things wrong all the time. I just shut up, right? And so in that moment, imagining that you can also transform that decision and say, well, it is safe for me to speak, and using that as your new way of being, because that belief structure, that decision, that new decision is going to stimulate and drive new emotion, and that new emotion is going to drive new thought, right? And so I love that process for you is all about really grounding down to the roots and not ignoring the symptom, but also not only focusing on the symptom. It's like the symptom is going to show you the way to that deeper root cause. It's going to show you, hold on a second, there's something deeper going on here. I'm feeling this anxiety. I've got the shakes. I want to run away. But when we lean into it and we allow ourselves to go that full cycle, we do allow ourselves to go and, oh, okay, hold on. Like for you, it's like, oh, then I realized it came from this moment in time. And reparenting yourself through that. I mean, that's the power of working on the roots, right? And now, would you confidently say that anxiety no longer holds you back?
Anxiety does not hold me back anymore, no, because I've practiced this so much. So I don't have anxiety. Like, I don't think, like you said, it is just a symptom. No one has, like, they have anxiety as a symptom maybe, but it is not the root cause. And when you can go in and heal the root cause, you no longer have or experience anxiety. And you don't have to live with that identity or have it dictate or rule your life like it did for mine for so many years. Yeah, and exactly that. Like, it wasn't a conscious decision as a child. It wasn't, I didn't consciously decide that it wasn't safe to speak. It's just that I formed that belief, and seeing where that had stemmed from was a huge block for me. I had no idea where it had stemmed from until I released the emotion from those experiences. But I had to go there first before I could clearly see where it had stemmed from. And as soon as I did, it was like, oh, I actually don't have to be fearful of this anymore. It was just a part of me that was trying to protect me from experiencing that emotion. But once I experienced that emotion, the clarity came, the confidence came. And since then, it's just been up level after up level for me, in that every time I release emotion, I just reach this new level of like peace, bliss, contentment, joy, love, really.
Yeah. I love that. It's so powerful. And, I'm going to be the one controversial comment, but everyone's got anxiety. We're going to, basically it's just a perpetuated sensation of fear in your nervous system, and it accumulates in whatever sensation is true for you. But ultimately, all of us are going to experience some level of these heightened emotions at some time in our life, where there are perceptual fears, and I think that, the more we allow ourselves to learn how to connect to our body, learn how to connect to that feeling, learn to regulate, learn to nurture our nervous system, learn compassion for ourselves, and allow ourselves to parent ourselves ultimately, and tell ourselves what it is that we truly need to hear in order for us to do the thing, but do it in a way that feels really exciting and really allow us to, like you said, step into that confidence. I truly believe, and I just want to finish on this kind of note, is that, there is a lot of this hype around exposure therapy. And like we mentioned before, feel the fear and do it anyway. And for so many people, it's like, and I guess if you're listening, and maybe you'll have something to say about this as well, but I know we've kind of mentioned this already, but if somebody is coaching you to do something that is ultimately out of your comfort zone and you're having this felt sense nervous system response and your thoughts are going wild, ultimately forcing yourself to do the thing is probably going to re-traumatize you. It's probably going to exacerbate the root cause issue because you haven't dealt with that issue. Would you agree?
I don't know what's just happened.
Ah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what's happened either.
I don't know. There's a delay now.
Oh, bummer. I'll just ask my question again. So in regards to exposure therapy, you know, obviously if you're being coached to feel the fear and do it anyway, there is like, if you're having this felt sense, this nervous system response where it is, you're feeling the panic, you're feeling the overwhelm, you're starting to get the sweats, you're shaking, you have all these thoughts of, you know, perpetual doom, then potentially going and doing that thing and feeling the fear and doing it anyway is potentially going to re-traumatize you, right? Because you haven't dealt with that root cause. You haven't allowed yourself to regulate and bring yourself back to, hold on a second, I can do this, and coming from a place of calm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was certainly the case for me. It just reinforced almost a belief in me. Not that anyone was teasing me, but I was ultimately criticizing myself. So yeah, I mean, definitely being able to release that emotion that was backing my fear, that was charging my fears, had me feeling, oh, okay, it's actually safe to do this and I don't need to worry about anything. And then I could show up and there was no risk of re-traumatizing myself because I'd already calmed my nervous system from that state, from that fear. And I think it's a really beautiful practice for anyone, is just to go into that before you have to go and do the thing, whatever it is. And seek support if it's what you need, you know, because there's so many coaches out there that can support you through this too.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. This has been such an amazing conversation. And I know that for anyone listening that feels stuck and doesn't know where to go, tell us a little bit more about where we can find your book, or books, I should say, so they can get their hands on that and obviously learn more about your process and moving through and ultimately letting go of this anxiety. Tell us a little bit more about where they can find that, where they can find you on social media as well. And I suppose to round out, something that you would want the listeners to really embody and kind of take away with them and implement this to help them on their journey.
Okay. Well, first of all, so my books, You Don't Have Anxiety and Becoming Her, The Woman You've Been Taught Not to Be, both really powerful and meet people at different stages of their journey. They're both on Amazon and on Audible. But if you jump on my website, taraswann.com, and go to either of those pages, so Becoming Her or You Don't Have Anxiety, you can actually get access to some free masterclasses if you pop in your receipt number after purchasing. So the purchasing links are all in there. Pop in your receipt number and you can get access to these masterclasses for free as well. So jump on my website. It's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, if you're a listener, Audible, otherwise Amazon has the books. My Instagram handle is at It's Tara Swann, and Swann has 2 N's. That's the best place to find me if you want to ask any questions. I love connecting with people. But jump on there. And what would I want to leave people with?
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I think trust just popped into my mind. Like, trust was a huge thing for me. I didn't trust myself or trust what was coming up for me to really go into it. And, you know, that's part of You Don't Have Anxiety. The book is finding that radical self-trust within yourself, because you do need to obviously cultivate that awareness, but start trusting what's coming up for you to be able to go into what it is you're experiencing, because it's so easy to start experiencing something and be like, that actually, that just seems like BS or whatever it is, like whatever pops up, trust that and start moving through that. Whatever's being shown to you is probably something you need to see or hear right now. I've got so many examples of this in my books as well. My books are so raw and vulnerable, so many stories in there of exactly how I healed through so much of my own life challenges. But yeah, trusting yourself. But ultimately, if you don't trust yourself yet, trust what is being presented to you in your life. The universe is always backing you. And if you can't trust in yourself, trust in what's showing up, trust in the universe first. It's ultimately all the same thing. You are an extension of source, you're an extension of the universe. So just, I don't know why, but trust popped into my mind. And I think that's a beautiful place to start, trusting what's coming up for you and what's being presented to you in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'll add to that. Trust what's coming up for you and allow yourself to sit with it. You know, I feel like so many of us, we have these thoughts and these emotions, or we have these things that are running through our mind, and we try to rationalize it, or we try to dismiss it, or we try to, you know, push it away and ignore it because we're like, oh, that's stupid. But sit with it and just allow it to be present, because it's okay if you doubt yourself, or it's okay to feel fear, or it's okay to question your abilities, right? But ultimately, if you ignore it or dismiss it, you're really missing a great opportunity to learn something that's going to help you to move through that. Remembering that, you know, we can't get over it. We've got to move through it first, right?
And just connecting and learning more deeply about yourself, which is ultimately what you need to move through life in an authentic way, is just to be reconnected to who you are at a core level. I think it's so important.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I'll put all of your links in the show notes so you can grab access to her books and her audios, but also her social links. And if you are listening and you feel stuck, reach out. Both Tara and I are coaches. We focus on bringing you to that root cause and helping you to heal through that so that you can ultimately get past anything that is blocking you from ultimately feeling that joy and those experiences that you're wanting to have in life. Like Tara's experienced, she's proof of the pudding, you know, leaning through those root causes has enabled her to absolutely thrive in life. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to lean in. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. Even just a small conversation, a question, these all help you to build that courage to really receive the support that you might need. So a massive thank you to you, Tara. Thank you for joining us on the No BS Health and Happiness podcast. And until next time, I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.